Welcome back to another debrief. This time, round 3, Formula Drift Orlando, and this one was crazy. This is the most insane event this year so far. Also, my favorite event of the year so far. We had some great driving. You know, you can bet on drifting these days, and if I would have made a bet, I would have lost every single bet that I made. There were crazy upsets, some crazy crashes and entanglements, but let's get right into it. We're going to go into the seating bracket. I'm not going to talk about every single battle, but I want to show some of the highlights that we saw right away. Leading off with Tommy Lemaire and Connor O'Sullivan. Started off to be a pretty good battle, but O'Sullivan got a little overzealous from interclip 1 to 2, and we saw this. This would set the tone for the rest of it. O'Sullivan slams into TLO, and it's something that we're going to see throughout the seating bracket. So O'Sullivan deemed at fault for charging a little bit too hard on TLO, and Lemaire would just go on to get the win in this one. The next battle, Mata versus Federico. So Austin Mata started off pretty strong, but it's somewhere in interclip 1 and 2 kind of makes a little bit of a mistake, and Feddy had nowhere to go, smacks into him. This time they deemed the lead driver at fault, so Federico would move on. The next battle was Jack Shanahan versus Rad Dan, and this started out to be a pretty promising battle itself. Jack Shanahan throws down a heater lead. Then we flip the positions. Dan is in the lead position, and behind him, Jack Shanahan hits the wall in outer zone 1, and then right after that, Rad Dan hits the wall, taking himself out. They didn't hit each other, so they're separate instances. This is a 0-0. They go back to judge the lead run of Jack Shanahan, and that's just what does it. So Jack Shanahan would move on, and Rad Dan just has to tuck his tail for this one, even though he will be moving on into the 32. So our next battle was Daigo Saito versus Dmitry Brutsky, and it was an all right battle. It looked okay, and Brutsky just kind of made a mistake from interclip 1 to interclip 2. As I said before, this just kind of happened. So really, it's just kind of a funky thing of guys trying to get their stride. Daigo edged him out on that one, so he would get the win. And then the next thing I really want to mention is that TLO had a bye run. And that was probably the best bye run we saw all weekend. Tommy Lemaire just threw down a literal heater of a run, and he was stoked on it. We were all stoked on it. I would watch it multiple times. It was fantastic. Next up, we had Daigo Saito versus Federico Sharifo, and Daigo just sucked himself into the wall. So Federico moves on, and we'll see another battle. The next battle would be Jack Shanahan versus Tommy Lemaire. And TLO, he had a problem. Had a problem at the line, but he had already used his 5-minute timeout. He's out of timeouts, which means Jack Shanahan gets a bye run and will move on into the finals. That would be Jack Shanahan versus Federico Sharifo. And, it was a fairly good battle. This was a good final battle. Federico had a really good lead run, but Jack was just on a heater. So that's kind of how it shaped up. We got Jack Shanahan first place. Federico Sharifo claps back in second place, and then Daigo Saito third, moving us into top 32. And for the first time, I'm going to go through every single battle in the top 32, as it was pretty interesting, and we'll move through it pretty quick. But the first battle we had was James Dean versus Austin Mata. Mata is doing great in his first year, so he's been doing good. He just unfortunately got paired against James Dean, and James Dean would move on, get the win in this one. Next up, we have Rome Charpentier versus Trenton Beecham, and Rome would move through that BMW battle, so Rome moves on. Beecham would have to sit that out. Next up, we move to Matt Field versus Rad Dan, and it's just a weird battle. This one I thought was kind of funky. It started off great, and then right at the end on Matt's lead run, Rad Dan just smashes into him, and I don't know what happened. I really couldn't tell you. To me, it maybe looked like Dan kind of ran out of power or something and then just straightened up and hit Matt, but he really stayed in it. I thought it was strange, but Matt would ultimately get the win on that, and Rad Dan, I don't know what happened. So Matt moves on into our next battle, which was going to be a heater, man. Tommy Lemaire was looking really good in seating, and then one of the fan favorites, Adam LZ. But this was not a great battle for either driver. They were both driving better than this. So top 32 battle is kind of ugly. LZ went a little bit wide in outer zone 1, and then Tommy Lemaire just kind of threw it away. He had a pretty ugly entry, which would ultimately give Adam LZ the win. So moving on, we have Castro versus Ryan Literal, and Castro would pretty easily get that win. And then the next battle, a couple cool dudes. Ken Gucci versus Jonathan Hurst. Gucci showed some real composure and moved right on, man. He always looks pretty good in Orlando if the car is working for him, and it was. So he moved right on. Then we have Sorensen versus Hansen. Rudy Hansen just kind of straightened up, hit the wall. Sorensen had nowhere to go. So Sorensen also hit the wall, but flipped the script, and Sorensen had a really good run. So Sorensen would move on. And the next battle we had Dylan Hughes versus Jack Shanahan, and this was probably one of the best battles we had seen so far, but Dylan was just locked in. He put on one of the best runs I've seen him do in Orlando, so he had a great drive and would move on, sitting Jack Shanahan out again. Next up, we have one of the weirdest battles I'd seen all day, which was Frederick Osbo versus Nick Novak. And it's shaped up to be a pretty good battle, but Novak lost the tire from inner 1 to inner 2. He lost the tire. Osbo was so close to him, he didn't even notice and ran it over. So didn't know what really happened. He said something felt weird, but he lost an entire tire, and Osbo ran it over. Osbo gets the win, still pretty baffled at what happened. Nothing happened to the car, so he's stoked to move on to the 16. Next up, we had Jeff Jones versus Daniel Stuckey, and Stuckey put down a pretty good run, and would move on to the top 16 himself. Next up, we have Hiro Manoa versus Dmitry Brutsky, and we see early on here that Hiro is just on a mission. Lays down some of the best runs we've seen all day and would move on. Brutsky tried his hardest, but when a man's on a mission, he's on a mission. So Hiro put down a great run, would move on into the top 16. Next up, we have Connor Shanahan versus Daigo Saito, and Connor put on a pretty good run there. It was okay. I think both drivers did all right here. Connor moves on, showed his really good timing in his chase skills. So the Shadow moves on to the top 16. Next up, we have Odie Bachus versus Andy Haitley, and Odie is just so fast. He's just so fast. And the Drift Wizard, he just couldn't pull it out. Couldn't pull it out of the hat, man. Just kind of got lost in the smoke, or just trying to keep up, and Odie would move on. Next up, we have Ben Hobson and Simon Olsen. And Simon just had a really heater lead run. Ben did pretty good in the chase, but when you flipped it, then Ben's lead run just botched the entry. And I know he would want that one back. It would have been a stellar battle, but he botched the entry, so Olsen would move on in that battle. Moving us into our final two battles, which would be Ryan Turk versus Derek Madison in what would be another huge upset. So Turk had a solid lead run. Very good lead run. And D-Mats, I mean, for all intent and purposes, a really good chase. Just Turk was kind of burning him. But then you flip the script, and on the run up, Turk just pops out of gear. D-Mads would lay down a pretty good run anyway, so I think it would have been a really cool battle to see. But Turk pops out of gear, and D-Mads moves on, which is his first top 16, so he's super stoked. It's good to see that. It was definitely a good run. We wanted to see a battle, but that's how he got in. The last battle of the top 32 would be Chris Forsberg versus Federico Sharifo, and Forsberg was on one. He made it look easy, so he put on a pretty good run, and he would move on. So into our top 16. Now moving into the top 16, a little bit of weird sun conditions they were talking about it. In Orlando, you have kind of a funky way the sun's coming down. You can't really see turn one, which is sketchy. It's super bright, and then that first corner is super dark, and then the rest of the course is laid out. But the first one is arguably the most intimidating. So Rome and James Dean would be the first battle up. James had a solid lead run, and not a great chase. When they flipped the script and Rome was leading, Rome had a better chase and a better lead. So Rome took down James Dean in the top 16. This is the earliest that James has gone out this year. So kind of in a little bit of hot water when you're chasing for the championship, getting knocked out in 16. Rome, great drive. Congratulations moving on to that, taking down the champ. Moving into what I was very excited for in the battles when I saw this bracket lineup, Matt Field versus Adam LZ. Matt was just fast, man. He was so fast on his lead run. And then when we go to the chase, Adam LZ leading, Matt was all over him and just bumping and grinding and everything else. And I think what really was the nail in the coffin for Adam is he kind of bobbled coming off the bank into interclip 1, and that would be the nail in the coffin for him. So Matt Field would move on, but a fairly good battle, pretty close battle. It was definitely entertaining to watch as Matt was all over him in the chase. Arguably, maybe a little too much, but still good. Next, we would move into Ken Gucci and Castro, and that was a pretty good battle, man. The first one was too close to call, so they went to a one more time. Castro had a really aggressive chase run, crazy entry. Probably one of the coolest entries I had seen in the chase position the entire weekend. So set himself up real good, and then Gucci had to shut it down in interclip 2 because trans broke, something like that. But I feel like that would have been a pretty dang good battle to see it go all the way. Unfortunately for Gucci, Carr let him down on that one. So Castro would move on and into the grade 8. Next up, we have Dylan Hughes and Brandon Sorensen. Pretty good BMW battle here. Bunch of bumping and grinding. These guys were just letting it all hang out there. Hughes had a super good lead run and a great chase by Sorensen. So Sorensen edged him out just a little bit. But I think it was a great drive from Dylan Hughes. Just Brandon ever so slightly edged him out, in my opinion. So moving into the next battle, we have Osbo versus Daniel Stuckey. And this is a big battle for the championship race, as if Osbo wins this battle, then he is leading in the points. He would pass James Dean. So he did just that. So Freddie just puts it on him, and he would move on to be the number 1 position in Formula Drift at this time. So moving into the next battle, we have Hiro Manoa versus Connor Shanahan, which, I mean, these are 2 rising stars. Connor is a youngin'. Hiro is a real youngin'. We knew this was going to be super aggressive, super fun, and it was really aggressive and really fun to watch. Connor had a super aggressive chase, but going from interclip 1 to inter 2, a little bit of a weird straighten. Not necessarily a straighten, just kind of mistimed it, and then Hiro would put on a fantastic chase run as well. So Hiro would move on. Again, just you can tell this guy is on a mission. So Hiro moves on into our next battle, which would be Odie Botchus and Simon Olsen, former teammates. And Odie's just super fast again, but he did bump in outer 1, just kind of weird, a little uncharacteristic of Odie. But when you flip it over and Simon does his lead run, Simon kind of missed all of outers on 1, and Odie just took advantage of that. So Odie would take the win, knocking out his former teammate. Next up, we have Derek Madison's first battle in the top 16, which was against Chris Forsberg. So not an easy opponent for your first time in the top 16. Forsberg had a really good lead run, and D-Mad, it's kind of funny, just carried interclip 1 around the entire track. Kind of amazing, actually. But, you know, pretty good runs throughout. I think really D-Mad just had a weird entry, and that was the nail in the coffin for him. So Forsberg would move on, but I know Madison had fun in that one, and that would conclude the top 16, moving us into the grade 8. So the grade 8 was shaping up to be something a little bit different than we'd seen this year, with everything shaken up a little bit. Now we have Rome Charpentier versus Matt Field, and it would be a good battle, man. It was really entertaining to watch. Rome was on one today, but Matt brought the heat, and they went one more time. But Matt was just super fast on the second battle and would edge Rome out. Rome kind of straightened up a little bit, so Matt got the win and was moving on to the Final Four. Next up, we have Jonathan Castro versus Brandon Sorensen. This is another points battle that we weren't really paying attention to, that they were kind of close in the points battle. So Sorensen really wanted to win this one, but Castro also really wants to win. He's got a huge fan base down here. He's been very good here before. We saw him take down James Dean in one of the best battles in FD history. Castro and Sorensen line up. Sorensen had a great chase, but overrode it on his lead. Sorensen just overrode from inner 1 to inner 2. He overrode it, and Castro would move himself into the final 4. The dude is cheesing because he knows he's on the way to get his first podium ever. Next up, this is a battle. This is a real battle. We got Frederick Ospo versus Hiro Manoa, and man, beautiful runs from both drivers. But Hiro's lead run was just insane. The dude was on rails, and he pulled away from one of the fastest cars on grid. So really big upset here, knocking out Frederick Osbo, who is sitting currently in first place. Hiro knocks him out and moves on to the final 4. Next up, we have another stellar battle, which would be Odi Botchis versus Chris Forsberg. And Odi's just so fast. He's just so fast. So he would end up pulling on him again. And Forsberg, I don't know if he ran out of tire or what was going on there, but went out on outer zone 2 a little bit up on the bank. I feel like he might have just run out of tire. You know you have to push hard against Odi. Odi's going super fast. So Odi ultimately gets the win on that one. So our first battle in the final 4 is Jonathan Castro and Matt Field. It was a pretty heater battle, man. Like, they started off strong. They needed to clean up a few things. I think both of them had better runs coming into this. But when you go into the one more time battle, it's almost the same battle. I think this is just kind of how their cars were set up. They had their own strengths and weaknesses in different areas. But Castro would ultimately edge him out and get the win on this one. Next up, we got Hiro Manoa versus Odi Botchis, and another banger battle, but Hiro was fast this time. Odi is normally one of the fastest cars on grid. He really can lay it down, but Hiro was so fast. Pulled away, a very, very good lead run, and also a great chase. So Hiro showing that he will not back down. He said he was going to win this one. He wanted to be on the box, and he will move into the final. So that leads us to our final battle. We have Castro getting his first podium ever. He is stoked. He's coming into this thinking he's going to win it, but Hiro, he told us he ain't going to lose, and he did not. Hiro put on some of the best runs we have seen in Orlando to date. It was fantastic. He put on a clinic, great chase run, and then a banger of a lead run, and would finish in style, man. Flames across the line, and I'm just stoked for both these drivers. So Hiro Manoa gets his first win, and Castro gets his first podium. So 2 firsts there, which is amazing. So both drivers put on a great show. They're both super stoked. I couldn't be happier. To me, these are 2 very nice guys that totally deserve a win. And you can see it in Hiro's face. You can see it in Castro's face. Very good finale. Definitely wanted to see that. But let me go through the top 10 in our current standings. So this event shook it up a little bit. Right now, in first place, we have Frederick Osbo. Second place, James Dean. Third place, Hiro Manoa sweeps in. And yeah, who saw that coming? I guess we should have, right? He's on it. But fourth place, we have Jonathan Castro right behind them. And then Odi Botchis, Brandon Sorensen, Matt Field, Chris the Force Forsberg, Adam LZ, and Connor Shanahan. That's your top 10. What do you think is going to happen in the next one? I don't know what's going to happen in the next one. I don't know if I ever want to place bets because I think I'm going to be wrong, but I'm intrigued, right? Today, I would like to welcome our special guest, Reese Marin, one of our favorite judges. This is why I'm not a judge, because I can be super biased. Hey, Reese, how are you, man?
Hey, what's going on, Dan?
Oh, not much. Finally, a cool round, dude. Like, Orlando is really good. I enjoyed watching it. I watched it in its entirety from seating all the way through. Unlike Atlanta, where I had to go back and skip through a couple things because it was so slow. If it rains in Atlanta, it's horrible. But Orlando turned out pretty dang good.
Yeah, I would say so. It was smooth sailing. I was a little worried there because of the weather, but ultimately it cleared up when it needed to, and it was just it was a good, clean set of battles that went down. It was sick.
Yeah, Florida stuff. You never know what you're going to get. I've been there multiple times. So you see, definitely the sun affects people there. And then also when it's sitting still and the smoke is just billowing, it just stays there. Don't move.
stagnant. Ugh.
It's like a pond. Anyway, let's get into this. I want to talk pretty much right away about the seating. So, seating, we saw a couple different things. It's always like a teething moment for all of the drivers to get adjusted and acclimated. Some sloppy battles, but how do you feel about seating as opposed to qualifying? Is this going to be something that stays? Is it something that we see changing in the future, or do you feel pretty dialed in with it?
Um, I'm fine with it. I'm definitely on the side of like, I'd rather not see qualifying anymore. I'd rather just see battles. Um, Again, this is also coming from someone who's very jaded, so I get to see a ton of single runs in my time. So it's just like, for me, I'm just kind of like, I want to hurry up and get to the battles. I want to see this. I want to see these guys duke it out. So because of that and me having that perspective, I'm probably always going to lean on the fact that I'd rather it just be battles. Um, but I get why people like the qualifying. Like I totally get that. Um, but I just like the battle stuff. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. You know how that goes. Like, who knows what's going to go down pipeline. But I think at least for right now and for the foreseeable future, like I think the battle format is pretty much how it's going to be.
So, how do you feel about how seating worked out this time? I mean, we had quite a few entanglements, like TLO, Osoli. Those guys got a little tangled up. Right after that, we had Mata and Fetty just get stuck together. A weird section in between interclip 1 and 2. I feel like a lot of guys were struggling there. What do you think is the problem in that area?
I think the guys were just getting acclimated to it. You could see some guys picked it up fairly quickly, and you could see other drivers were maybe maybe just struggling finding their rhythm. Um, and I think some of them are just kind of institutionalized of just driving a certain way. Obviously, this year we're definitely emphasizing to leave room for the chase driver to not pinch them off and let it be more so about the line angle and leaving that space, leaving that pocket open. So I think there's been a little bit adjustment for that. And I think some people are getting more used to doing that than others. Also, like who's to say like a lot of these cars are very different. These machines, as you know, they're not like any other drift car that's out there in the grassroots world, so like these cars are always on the edge. They're always trying to find their combination that kind of works. So sometimes it may not be a driver thing. Sometimes like they just haven't found the right formula, the right setup, or the car doesn't rotate the way it is. As you know, it could be infinite reasons. So at this level, it just becomes so complex where it could be one of many things that doesn't allow someone to maybe find that pace that they're looking for.
Yeah, I know as working on crews to find the balance at some place like Orlando, right? You have the bank and then you have a flat infield. So guys are trying to find a balance of what works on the bank, what works on the flat. And sometimes you screw it up, and coming on the bank works and then the flat doesn't, or vice versa. So not able to work in the bank and then it works down low. So I see some of that in there. And then also I guess we had a lot of new drivers that haven't driven it really too much. However, it is just one transition, right? Which makes it what on the surface looks like very simple, right? But what you're not taking into account is the elevation and everything coming down off of that bank is really abrupt. And in the past, we've had to build a lot of bracing for cars underneath because of that bump. This time, it looked a little smoother coming into that, and I think it was just maybe the line was adjusted a little bit in order to make that smoother.
I don't know. I actually wasn't there for when the line was actually put down. What I can say is after this round, I definitely noticed that maybe there could be the way we put down, paint the lines for that one particular that outside line coming off of outside zone one. I am suggesting maybe just making it maybe a little bit wider, which probably will help with the whole transitional section that we're talking about. But yeah, you can see that there was people were struggling, some people weren't. It's like I said, it's a lot, and then we're asking them to get inside of this box. So it's like back to back, and then going back into the outside zone. And like you said, it is only one transition, which simple, yes, and then complicated because now every zone and specifically that transition becomes a focus point in what we're looking for when we're judging the battle. And that can be a good thing. That can be a bad thing because if you breathe off the throttle incorrectly, like it'll just be on there to showcase in front of us all.
Yeah, and since it's right dead center, I mean, it is the only spot where you can really make a huge difference and make your transition, make everything impactful. So if you screw that section up there, I think there's a lot of weight on the drivers to get that dialed in and perfect. So maybe they're stressing that a little bit, some of the newer drivers. But the guys who are dialed in are really dialed in on that. And we saw a lot of really good battles this time. I mean, even in seating, we saw some pretty cool stuff. But I mean, Jack Shanahan always seems to do well in seating, and then for whatever reason in comp, he's had a plague of bad luck, or just I don't even know what it is. Maybe it's just a difference in the track. But he looks acclimated in seating. But then we get to competition, not quite as dialed in.
Yeah, I think Jack is an amazing. He definitely has it in him. He's an amazing driver. He definitely has it in him to just murder it, But it's like it's a lot. You're coming over from overseas. God knows what it takes to get that program going. Like I understand what it is to be here in the United States and doing it, but here bringing it over, I'm sure there's some sacrifices that he's making and maybe how he would want the car to be. Or I don't know. It could be again another infinite of things. So I think when it comes from anyone that comes from a situation like himself or his brother, anybody that comes overseas, I think for a lot of us, we just take for granted on how we don't have to go through that hurdle of crossing a pond to come here and all the responsibilities and headaches or extra paces you have to go through in order to make that happen. So I think it might be just that and balancing all that out. There is moments where like you're like, man, this dude is on. And so I think once he finds his own rhythm and he gets comfortable with being over here, um, it'll be a different story. I think it'll be more so like, man, like how do we stop Jack?
Yeah, yeah. And another driver I wanted to comment about in the seating bracket was Tommy Lemaire. That heater run on his buy run, like it was totally it stood out to me above almost anything that we saw in the seating bracket. It was like, man, where was that at, and where did it go?
Yeah, yeah. It was dude, he's another one. Like once he gets his feet settled and I don't know, once he gets his grip going and you know how like the term like wearing in, like once you're like kind of worn in, like when you like when you get a new glove or something or whatever, like you just kind of wear it for a while and you feel comfortable. I feel like once these drivers get to that point with their car, like you just never know. Like like I feel like there's going to be a generational switch between some of the drivers, like some of the dudes that have been there for a while are like starting to maybe show some cracks, and then some of the newer dudes are just like, gotcha, like they're ready. They've been learning from these older guys, so it's like I don't know. It's you're definitely seeing a lot of that. You know what I mean?
So let me lead into this. I want to talk a little bit about the judging and kind of what I see as a spectator. For me, felt apparent in Atlanta and somewhat here. It feels like weighing pretty heavy on the lead run, a fairly big emphasis on the lead run rather than the chase. Whereas I feel in the past it was a fairly equal balance, but I feel like the weight has kind of shifted to pretty heavy on the lead run.
Right, right. I would say, yeah. I think more emphasis is more put on it right now, maybe because we're actually talking about it more. Because like even when I was spotting for Chelsea in 2023, our whole basis was the emphasis of like, oh, we got to make sure our lead run is perfect. Because if our lead run is perfect, then we can focus on the chase run and like bury this person.
Yeah.
But in order to get to that part where we could like chase and bury that person, we had to do the homework, which was like, okay, what do they want for the lead run? All right, cool. We have to do that first.
Yep.
That was kind of always the mindset. Yeah, there was like sometimes things that didn't go our way, whether when I was spotting for Chelsea or when I was spotting for anyone else in the years past. But like for me, like making sure the lead was always complete was like the work. Do that first, and then you get to chase. Obviously, if you chase first, the roles are a little reversed, and everyone has their own strategy if you have to chase first. But I think we're just talking about it a lot more because it just kind of I think we all internally knew that like you have to put down a really good lead run. But I don't think the public really understood why you needed to put down such a good lead run. Because, for an example, we go back to Long Beach when we saw Manoa go against Forsberg. When Forsberg led, he put down such an amazing lead run that it allowed Manoa to be glued to his door. And it looked like, wow, like Manoa did a better job chasing. Well, yeah, he did, but only because Forsberg provided that space in order for that to happen. Manoa's on his lead run. He had like a pretty significant error, and like obviously Forsberg wasn't able to do the same in return or in the beginning of that battle. So like the uneducated was like, well, Manoa did a better job. He was completely glued to him. He was able to mirror him better, but they don't take in consideration the inconsistencies that happen on the chase and the lead run prior to. So I think putting more emphasis on like, hey, you have to have this lead run complete allows people to one understand why, and then we can enjoy the chases and why the chasers are so important and why they're so good in certain situations.
Right. And I think I could take this back to even how grassroots operates, right? Like when you're out there with your friends and you're the lead car, you don't want to just friggin' leave them or pinch them off. You want to drive with your friends. You want to have a good, nice, flowy run. Otherwise, it just looks like trash. And it's not even fun at that point. So I think the new style is kind of cool for laying out the track just a bit differently, right? For the lead drivers to welcome chase drivers rather than say like Atlanta where you can pinch somebody off pretty easily. And even here, honestly, in Orlando, if you get that transition wrong, you can really pinch somebody off and there's nowhere for them to go. You have one transition, one way to go about it. So I think it's kind of cool. And I think the drivers are still adjusting to it because they're a little bullheaded, right?
Yeah, I think I understand where some of the drivers are coming from because they're like, I invested all my money. I got all this, they're looking at money, how much time, effort they've put into the program, and they've already set their mind to like drive a certain way, as per, whatever Formula Drift was prior to. And it's like, hey man, the most relatable thing is that you're right. You go to the grassroots and you say, and I actually said this in one of the rounds in the drivers meeting. I was like, if you guys were in a drift train and the lead car messes up, it would mess everything up. And like they all agreed. I'm like, well, then what are we talking about here? It's the same thing
Yeah,
here. Like, I don't
exactly.
want, why would you want to win because you were able to transition? You pinched this one guy off because you got there faster, and then that guy wasn't able to keep up with you. So did you really outdrift that person, or did you out trick him, or did you out, for the most part, gap him or race him? Because as far as I know, that's not outdrifting the person. Like you just got lucky, or you kind of were able to find the advantage in however this was laid out. But that would never fly in the grassroots, because if you go to the grassroots and you do, you and your buddy decide to battle it out, and you were to do some shit like that, your friend and everybody watching would be like, well, you didn't do it, you pinched them off.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like,
I agree.
like, so why would it change in the pros? And I'm not saying the pros were doing it on purpose or how it was set before. I just think drifting has evolved, and the community, everybody together, has gotten so much better. And now even the normal fans can call you out and be like, you didn't really beat him. You pinched him off. You didn't drift him. Or, hey man, like, how did you win that? You had less angle than the other guy that was still adhering to what the judges were saying. So we're definitely putting an emphasis on the lead run and angle. Like a lot of people are getting mad because we're requesting angle, which blows my mind. Like
Yeah.
this is drifting, like we want
Well,
angle.
I think a battle, as an example of what we were talking about here, is I believe it was Olson, um, a separate incident, right? Two guys go into the wall separate of each other, but the lead driver goes into the wall just a little bit. The chase driver has nowhere to go, right? So if he screws up, as a chase driver, you're putting all of your trust in the lead driver doing what he's supposed to do. And if he doesn't do that, well, then how is that my fault? So I can totally see that as a chase driver. If that guy screws up at all, it's on him. So weighing on that lead run, I see is definitely a huge deal, right? You need to have a perfect heater run in order to have a great chase, and then flip it and try and do the same. And I understand that completely. It just on the outside looks like it's super weighed heavily upon one than the other. I don't even know. It's a weird thing. You guys have a crazy job, and it kind of sucks to dictate who can win over something like that. And I know that now, looking at the lead runs and going back and watching it again, me watching it sometimes, like you said, you get emotionally invested. Like, oh, Hero was right on him. So how did this go the other way? But you have to look at that lead run. Otherwise, it's all out the window.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really what's going on. You know what I mean? Like you have to look at what's being asked out there, and even with the lead runs, I tell them, like, let's say two drivers put down, they get deep into the zone, they run the same exact line, but one guy has more angle than the other person. Right? That means that the person who has more angle, by nature, right, he's going to go through that layout maybe a little bit slower, right? So
Mhm.
you mean we're not going to reward that? Like,
Yeah.
like if he's running a gangster line, crazy angle, appropriate, right? Because there's some places that if you do it, you're not supposed to do it, but like appropriate angle, certain spots, loads up his car, does a transition, slows down with angle correctly, doesn't disrupt the momentum variance, and like the other guy does the same but with less angle, but he's quicker. Like, why would we?
Yep.
Like, what are we talking about here, man? You know?
Are there? I'll get into the back into Orlando here. Is there anything of the calls that you made you wish you could have back? Like, I staunchly stand on this as a one more time, or this guy drove better than that. Because you drive, or you judges have to go. You are usually fairly different. You are usually the one that shakes it up a bit. Is there something you're standing on that you're saying this guy did this?
No. You know what I think it is? I wouldn't change any of my calls or anything, but more so just that the other judges that are veteran me by like years, um, they make me feel so comfortable about having my independent opinion, and they make me feel like it's okay to how to have my own perspective on things, that it allows me to make these decisions and go the way that I go, and not feel like they're going to judge me off of it. It's always like, oh, okay, I could see how you went that way. And it's, after we make a call, like we slowly or we make a call, we'll have a little sidebar about it real quick. And never once have we ever looked at one another like, why would you say that? Or anything. Playfully, we bust each other's balls and stuff like that. But it's, I think they have such a really great environment, or at least they've provided me with such a great environment that it allows me to feel very comfortable to choose whatever I'm feeling. And that's exactly what you want for a judge in a scenario like that, to never feel like they have to feel a certain way. I feel like all of us feel pretty free to just give our 100% independent opinion, and I think that's the best thing about being up there.
Awesome. Um, who is the angriest driver this season? Who's the one protesting you guys? If you can't say it, don't worry about it.
I don't know who would be. I mean, Dan was upset at Atlanta, but that's because he, it happened to come out on Circle of Joy, one of the podcasts. Yeah, the Circle of Joy podcast, and I was like, oh, I saw it there, and I saw it through the internet and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't think anyone's upset. I think it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's going a lot smoother this year than last year. We put it
Yeah.
that way. You know what I mean? I think it's going a lot smoother than that, but you know, I think right now it's going good, and I think everybody's just kind of getting acclimated to it. So I'm just going to keep that momentum going that way, and hopefully it all just kind of goes smooth from here on out.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see it, man. I'm excited. This round really pumps me up, right? Because it shakes things up. You want to see the big Titans fall a little bit. It's kind of fun to see that Rome Charpentier taking out James Dean. It's fun to see, man. And just like no mechanical failure, nothing there. Just Rome straight driving, man. That's cool to see. And then it's great to see Castro and Manoa do the same thing. So very cool for these new upcoming drivers. And someone like Castro, who's been at it for a long time and wanting this spot, is really cool to see them earn that. And that brings you right back in. Like Last round was a little bit funky because of the weather and whatever, but this one brings you right back into the lineup, and it's like, this is good. Who are we going to see in Jersey? And now I have no idea. Like, who's going to show up? And I had mentioned this earlier that you can bet on drifting, right? You can bet on it now. And if I would have made a bet this round, I would have lost 100%.
Yeah, I'm sure people lost money.
For sure.
I mean, I think it's I think it's funny. People ask me all the time, and I'm like, no, I don't. I know, we come from that era of drifting where none of this stuff existed. So, we were just kind of like, yeah, whatever it is. Like, but yeah, you don't know who's going to go into New Jersey. It can be anyone's game at this point, and I think that's what's great about the sport right now. It's reaching a level where, Castro can still come in, who's a veteran in this sport for sure. But it's taken a while to get to the podium, and it's finally got up there. And then we have Manoa, who's just fresh all around and is just coming up here just like swinging hard. So it kind of shows everyone like, okay, some of these guys can definitely get tripped up. And, once people get more like having those guys get on the podium gives confidence to everyone in the field saying, you know what, we can totally beat them. It doesn't matter how many championships those guys have together. Like, we catch them on the wrong rhythm. Like, we can take them out. We just got to be ready for it.
Maybe it's just me personally, but I want to see it shaken up. I don't need to see a 5th championship. I don't need to see another 4th championship. I want to see a new driver coming in hard, right? And I think this could be the season that happens, and it's shaping up to be that way. We might see a Titan fall, and we might see one of the changing of the guard. Like, there might be one of the new guys come in and win this, and I think that's something we want to see as people have been around for a long time.
And I love James. I love Osbo. I love watching them drive. It's amazing. They're so good. It's annoying being a judge when they drive together, as you guys saw in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I love watching them, but I don't want to judge them. I just want to enjoy what I'm watching, and I'm like, this is sick. But instead I got to sit there and like, all right, where's there an error here and there? And I'm like, they're so good. I just don't want to deal with it. I love those guys, but I do want to see you be shaken up. I want, I don't want anyone to lose, but like, that's this, the sport isn't for that, so like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But you're right. I'm on your side. I like to see things been shaken up, and whoever comes out on the other end, let it be that person.
Awesome, man. Well, it's all good to me. I can't wait for Jersey. I think it's going to be a kind of a make it or break it. We'll see a big change here, but thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for answering some stuff. And
Thank you.
I will get this whole recap on Jersey, dude. I'm ready for it. So
you coming out for Jersey or no?
I'm not sure yet. I don't know.
Thinking about
it. It's hard to be away. I've been involved for so long that it is kind of, after not being there, it's a little hard not to be there.
I mean, you come to Jersey, you get to come to Pro Growdown too, so it's like a double whammy.
That's true. It is one of my favorite events. And I have still not successfully driven that full track yet. Petty let me borrow a car. I broke it. Actually, a couple people let me borrow cars, and I broke it. So I never made a successful lap on the track.
Well, eventually we'll take care of that.
All right, man. Well, I'll see you soon. I'll see you on the mountain. Thanks for coming by. And yeah, man.
Oh, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks, right? That's right.
2 weeks. Yeah.
All right, screw this professional drifting stuff. Let's go to the mountain.
Dude, so much better. Right. See, and this is back to our lead run. If you screw up the lead run on the mountain, everyone dies. So
yeah, the consequences on the mountain are way more extreme. It's like, hey, listen, we want you to race down not race down the mountain. We want you to survive down the mountain together, but we're going to send all 30 of you at the same time. So whoever's leading, don't fuck up.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe FD needs a shakeup. Maybe all of them need to take their pro cars down the mountain and see who survives.
Oh, my God, no. No, I don't know about that.
No, we don't want to ruin a good thing.
They would die. They ain't ready for that. They ain't ready for that. They're too pretty over there. They ain't ready for that.
All right, man. Well, cheers.
Definitely, dude. Thanks for having me on, man.
Please follow along with us. This is Wrecked Magazine on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and, follow wreckedmagazine.com. read the articles. There's some good stuff going on in drifting, and you should read about it because put in a lot of work. It looks good. But that's going to do it for me. I'm Danger Dan. Skibbity boo bop. See you later.